Now let's discuss the MB science in depth. Look at this QR code and you can go and get more of the in-depth science from the website, from the company's point of view. Now you may have seen GLP-1 agonists in the news like Ozempic, Wegovy, Trulicity. A lot of the celebrities have taken this for weight loss. But there's some concerns, there's questions, and not a lot of people can get access to this. But I get a question of what exactly does GLP-1 do? And there's a couple things that it does. One, stimulates insulin secretion. The second one is it's inhibiting glucagon release. Now, these are the major factors that controls the blood sugar response in your body. Now, the reason we want to create some type of control there is uncontrolled blood glucose in your body ultimately leads towards inflammation. And chronic inflammation is what we call the silent killer. And the way that your body displays chronic inflammation outside of the common inflammatory factors is fat deposition. Now, if you really break down what fat deposition is in relation to electrons and protons, and not to get too nerdy with that, is that when you have an excess of protons in your body, that ultimately gets stored as fat. Now, when we can control all of these things, we can control the insulin response, we can control glucagon, we can ultimately control how your blood glucose rises and falls. And this also has an effect on slowing down your gastric emptying, therefore affecting your appetite and satiety. And a lot of people that I've worked with in the past, their major issue is, Doc, I just feel hungry even though I ate an hour ago. So if we can slow down gastric emptying, we can regulate your appetite, we can then decrease the amount of caloric intake. And that's going to have a profound effect upon how your body burns fuel for energy, particularly fat. And then another major one is improving insulin sensitivity. This is a major issue that a lot of people face because you can eat the same amount or a normal amount of glucose. But if your cells are not sensitized to the insulin that allows that glucose to enter, then your blood sugar is going to remain high and it's going to create a twofold effect. One, like I said earlier, if your blood glucose is high, that creates systemic inflammation. And the second part, if the glucose is not getting into the cells, then you're not making energy. This is why people will crave more food, more caloric intake, particularly carbohydrates. So if you're eating, you're not getting the glucose into the cells, you're not making enough energy, your body says, I need more energy. So it seeks after that, but then you're still not getting that energy into the cells to make ATP. And this is a vicious cycle. So GLP-1 is going to help to regulate all of these things. Now, outside of the whole weight loss thing that everybody looks at, what really excites me about the whole GLP-1 aspect is its systemic effects. And we're affecting almost every single organ in the body, from brain to your liver, your kidneys, and your heart. Every single organ in your body is being affected in a positive way. But the common question I get is, Doc, why does GLP-1 decrease with age? And like anything else, your body just starts to slow down with age. But remember, there are two types of age. There's your biological age and also your chronological age. We cannot affect our chronological age, but we can affect our biological age by the things that we're doing from a metabolic perspective. So over time, if your biological age and your metabolic processes starts to go the wrong way, you're going to impair beta cell function within the pancreas. That's going to impede the amount of insulin and other incretin hormones like GLP-1. You get changes in body composition. You start to notice gastrointestinal changes as well, hormonal changes, increased inflammation. All of these things has an effect upon GLP-1. And when your metabolic processes go off, so does the GLP-1 output from your body. Now, why the mind-body GLP-1 system? The thing that I'm most excited about is that this helps to improve the gut-brain axis communication. And this is the biggest thing that I harp on with all of my patients, and it's one of the foundational tenets that we work on in order to improve your health. And the biggest thing with that is if your gut is off, so is your brain, one, in clarity of thinking, and two, in your decision making. So I find that a lot of patients, when their gut is off, they tend to make poor choices, and it's really difficult for them to make better choices right off the bat until we get the gut better. A lot of times this also affects the taste buds. Gotta remember, taste buds are also part of the gut. And when we start making these small changes to improve the gut, the body and the brain also starts to kick in and says, I don't like that. Because it's been transitioned over to a state of rejection of things that would be helpful for the body. When we start to improve the gut, the brain starts to think clearer. The brain starts to make better choices. That's for sustaining of life and for thriving. Because you have to remember, you have two states in your body. One is that of survival, and then one is that of thriving. And if you're in one, you're not in the other. The other thing with the MB system is that this is a very easy way to make guided changes. Now, what I mean by that is the MB system is a bridge. It allows people to make slow incremental changes because all you're doing is you're taking a couple capsules, putting in a powder into your drink or into your foods and eating that. It's very simple. So this is what I love, is these slow incremental changes that creates that bridge to going from a survival mechanism into a thriving mechanism. Now, another common question that I get is this a pharmaceutical like the Ozempic and the Wegovy? No, these are all plant-based formulas that increase your body's natural production of GLP-1, which is produced in the gut. And there are very big differences between the MB system and synthetic GLP-1. And I want to point a couple of those out. Your body is the best pharmacy because it makes the correct things and in the correct doses at the correct time. So if we can activate that from your body, rather than giving it from an external source like a synthetic one, then you're going to get the results that you should be getting. Now, the difference between the MB system and also the 6 is that the synthetic analogs are designed to withstand the breakdown from these enzymes called proteases so that it enhances the stability and the efficacy. So it just lasts longer. And this is what we know as the pharmaceutical effect. People feel that. Now, there's also side effects with that because that doesn't happen naturally in your body. GLP-1 is produced by the gut cells, and then there's an enzyme that will break that down over time. It's quickly inactivated by these enzymes, and it should only last about a couple minutes. The pharmaceutical one can stick around from hours to even days. So we're seeing this drastic difference between the two. Now, the biggest one that I have to reiterate is that you may have prolonged side effects with any type of synthetic drug. The synthetics, while they're considered safe, they have some of the common side effects like GI issues. Mainly the ones that I've seen from patients are nausea, vomiting, and then also other things down the line, which are less common, but you can have things like pancreatitis. We don't know the long-term effects of these synthetic GLP-1 agonists, but GLP-1, you have to remember, is a naturally occurring compound in the body. So when we activate that through the MB system, your body is naturally going to do what it needs to do with that. So we're giving it what should be there, but no longer is there just because life had happened. So right now, you probably be familiar with the MB system. There's two products. The MB Core, this is basically the capsules. Its whole job is to improve satiety and help the gut microbes to produce what's called short-chain fatty acids through the different prebiotics that's included in that. So it's going to improve satiety, improve the insulin sensitivity, lower inflammation, lower blood glucose, and then mitigate the effects of the adipokines, the hormones that comes off from the fat cells. Now, the MB Enhance will further feed the microbes with the different prebiotics in there to create short-chain fatty acids. So again, the short-chain fatty acids will feed the gastrointestinal cells, and the GI cells will then create GLP-1. This will also balance the microbiome. Now, sometimes when you start balancing out the microbiome, because a lot of people have what's called dysbiosis, where their microbiome is out of balance. When you start balancing that out and you start displacing some of the opportunistic microbes, stuff like Candida and other types of microbes that are not necessarily the good ones. You may have side effects. This has had nothing to do with the MB system, but has everything to do with what was going on within your microbiome. Note that this is actually a good thing because a dysbiotic microbiome creates all kinds of havoc in your body. As we start balancing out that microbiome, you start displacing all of the bad ones. You start getting rid of what's called endotoxins. And then you can start producing the right amount of GLP-1 and also other things that your microbiome needs to be making. With the formulation in the MB Enhance, you'll also increase ketone production if you notice that there's MCT oil in there. Now, what this does is it'll add fuel for your brain. It'll also add fuel for the microbes and the GI cells to create all the things that it needs to do to create GLP-1. It's also another source of energy in the body. And if you look at the digestive health blend in here, the licorice, ginger, and the different probiotics there, this helps to, one, repair the gut lining, and two, decrease the amount of gut inflammation, which is very common, mostly everybody. There's also included nutrients within the MB Enhance. What I also recommend you add into your system is the Rise AM and the Reset PM. So the Rise AM and the Reset PM is basically the LifeVantage take on the multivitamin concept. It's tuned with the right nutrients for the right time. So looking at your circadian rhythms, it gives you the nutrients that you need in the morning and the nutrients that you need. Some of these nutrients do compete against each other. That's why it's been separated out. So I highly encourage you to add on the Rise AM and the Reset PM. Now, you may have been looking at the formulation and said, oh wait, was that folic acid? And folic acid has gotten a lot of attention within the social media realms. You may have seen certain influencers talking about folic acid and it's being toxic to the body and what have you. Now, I reached out to the scientific team at LifeVantage, and this is the email that I received back. And they're basically saying that the folic acid is methylated by an enzyme into its active form called methylfolate. And what'll happen here is that the body will utilize what it needs to, and what it doesn't, it'll just get rid of. The reason being that folic acid is included in this formulation was for stability and absorption. And they also recommended, if you're looking for folate, you need to be getting on the Rise AM for that particular reason. You're not going to get the full amount of complement within the MB Enhance. So get on the Rise AM and Reset PM. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about body composition. If you have one of those fancy scales that almost everybody has nowadays, it'll give you a readout of your fat percentage, your bone, muscles, water, and all that stuff. Now, I wanted to point out a couple things as far as metric wise that you want to take a look at. So these are the metrics that I utilize with patients whenever we do body composition analyses, and it's broken down by sex and also by age. And you can see here we're looking at the fat, muscle, water, and bone on the percentage of what it should be within the body. So take, for example, say you're a 39-year-old female. We want your fat percentage to be somewhere between 22 to 33, your muscle between 24 to 31, your overall water percentage to be 45 to 60, and then your bone percentages to be somewhere between 3 and 5. So take a look at this chart and see where you lie when you do your body composition analysis. One easy thing that you can do to measure where your body is metabolically is just getting a tape measure, just like you did your measurements before, and you want to look at your waist to hip ratio. So if you take your waist and you divide that by your hip measurement, you should be able to see a ratio of something less than 0.8 for females and something less than 0.9 for males. If you're above that, if you're going into the 0.8 to 0.84 for females or 0.9 to 0.99 for males, you would be considered in the overweight category. Now, the benefit of the waist to hip ratio is it really tells us one big issue, which is insulin sensitivity. So if you're tending more towards the overweight or obese, that means that you're not necessarily insulin sensitive, and that's something we got to work on. And the MB system is perfect for that. With the other measurements that you've taken, you can also calculate what's called the relative fat mass index. Now, the relative fat mass index is basically another take on the BMI. Everybody is familiar with the BMI, where they're looking at your height and it's also looking at your weight and creating what's called your body mass index. But that doesn't necessarily equate for or is as accurate to equate for your fat mass. So really smart people came up with what's called a relative fat mass index. So look at these equations, put in your numbers, and all you're basically going to need is your height and your waist circle. And basically you want your numbers to fall, if you're a female, somewhere between 21 to 31%, or if you're a male, 14 to 24%, just like when we looked at your body composition analysis. But if you haven't gone through a body composition analysis center where they have a machine that will give you all the readout, this is just another simple way you can calculate all of that. So I hope this is helpful. Let's go on to the next section.